Hello folks, friendly experienced lawyer here with another video. I think this is number 5, talking about whether or not it's a good idea to become a lawyer. Um, Let me just say this. In fact, I was just looking at some of the search results for legal jobs on the computer, and there are a fair number of them, and with kind of healthy salaries in some instances. Uh, Number one, and the major point I want to make about those ads on the internet for legal jobs, um, you're for every job, there are probably going to be at least 20 and maybe 200 applicants, you know. So your chances of getting any one of those jobs, unless you are a cookie cutter match, which becomes a real problem later in your career, because you'll find that being a cookie cutter, easily definable lawyer can be a stretch at times. It's not that easy. But what I'm saying is that the job competition for those positions is going to be extremely intense. So while that's all dangling out there as sort of provides hope, and oh yes, look, see, I can handle this financially. Well, I'm just telling you, it's like you sort of almost have to look at each one of those ads like you're going to audition for the starring role in the next Star Wars movie or something like that. There's going to be lots of applicants. If you get the job, you might hit a bonanza in terms of the payday, but everybody else is going to go home disappointed. So even though there are a lot of ads out there, I guarantee you there are probably 100 times as many lawyers. In an earlier video, I talked about a lot of displaced lawyers at one time or another in their career go out and do this thing called document review. Now, and I explained that a lot of times that you'll go into this room, with a sea of other lawyers who are between jobs or haven't been able to find a job, and they get anywhere from probably about 23 bucks an hour to maybe 27 or 28. Some may, I don't know. That's what I see out there when I see the ads. Now, we explained in previous videos that you're looking at, in terms of what it's going to put you back financially to become a lawyer, you're going to end up going to considerable debt. If you get federally guaranteed student loans, it's going to be non-dischargeable debt in bankruptcy. That means if you take bankruptcy, they're not going to forgive that debt, so it's always with you. There is a hardship exemption. Not granted that often, but that's another video. But that's a very serious consequence of undertaking the risk of going to law school and the financial exposure. The point that I'm making here is if you do that, and we pointed out also that, the size of the student loans are basically going to mean that you're going to take on what is basically the equivalent of an additional house payment or an additional fairly nice apartment payment into your family budget just to cover your student loans. That's a lot of money. How many people can pay rent or a mortgage in 2 places? Not unless you're easily making 6 figures. So I'll let you do the math. You can look at the previous videos. But the point that I'm making is and then I pointed out in an earlier video also that if you're looking to try to get a job in another state and you want to move across state lines because you find the job market to be kind of tight in your own state, not always that easy to do. Not always that easy to do at all, even if you can pass a bar exam in another state. Now, they do have this new multi-state system and all that kind of stuff, but you've got to really check. And traditionally, it is very tough to pick up and move and find a job a legal job in another state. Very tough to do. Uh, so, but so get back to my point. If you take like, let's take $25 an hour. Okay, let's take that because it's sort of a mid-range for document review. How are you going to pay for an extra house payment or an extra apartment payment, the equivalent of that? You know, you're going to pay somewhere between $1,100 and $2,000 a month more, maybe more than that. I had one of my clients that I talked about who had $250,000 in non-dischargeable student loans. You know, you're talking a mansion, an extra mansion there. That house payment, extra house payment, apartment payment was only if you're talking about borrowing, for example, $100,000 in student loans to pay for your law school education. It's a lot of money, a lot of money. Most people live paycheck to paycheck, especially early in your career. When you want to buy a house, you want a nice car, you want to make a good professional impression on folks. It gets tough to do when you're trying to sandwich those numbers into a typical budget, okay? But it gets back to this 25 bucks an hour, and it doesn't usually, a lot of times in a lot of states, I know one in particular, that if you're trying to get into another state, get on their bar of another state, they don't count as experience. Usually it's 5 years of experience before they'll give you reciprocity if the states recognize each other. Well, it's a long story, but they don't count document review. A lot of states don't count document review as being legal experience. That's very, very important. And so in essence, you get a bunch of lawyers who most have passed the bar exam, and they're sitting there and they're sitting in document review trying to pay this extra payment. And in the meantime, in law firms, you're going to have senior partners at these, and even partners at these law firms making, upwards of $1 million a year. And you've got all these other lawyers that can't pay their student loans. And we are going through this thing with President Biden right now with, it's the year 2022, about forgiving student loans. But those kind of people get into document review, you're pretty much stuck in that area. And this raises the big question in my own mind out of a sense of fairness, especially given what some of the senior partners are making for some of these firms, as to whether or not document reviewers should be allowed to unionize. The feeling here is they very much should be allowed to unionize, because if you're going to not pay them and not allow them to count their experience as legal experience, somewhere along the line, if you're going to treat them just like unlicensed personnel, well, then you got to give them the rights of unlicensed personnel, which means union. Let me repeat that, union for document reviewers. Bottom line is that with advertising costs and the cost of student loans, lawyers have to find a way to share expenses. And increasingly what you've got is it's just like everything else. You've got fewer and fewer super rich lawyers hiring lower and lower paid lawyers, even lawyers, basically as if they're non-licensed personnel. Basically, like if they're paralegals or something, you're paying them, relatively speaking, lower wages. Meanwhile, all the profits are being siphoned to the top, and you've got all these people with student loans, and then you've got certain politicians saying, well, just they shouldn't be disappointed just because they didn't get the job they wanted. Well, the numbers just do not work out. And it's like I said in a previous video, when you graduate from law school, they want to put you in a certain class with a certain amount of experience, and you're on a conveyor belt, and your job mobility and your ability to get into other law firms can be very limited, but based on the amount of experience you have. and whether or not you can bring in your own clients, which is absolutely critical for any lawyer's long-term career success, is basically to be able to take clients with them, good paying clients, regular clients. That, unless you're going to spend a gazillion dollars on advertising and get the the big personal injury cases, but you better be really well capitalized as a firm in order to do that. So in essence, I hope that you found this video to be useful. This is our 5th video. I'll sort of take a little while to digest what we've covered in these videos. The next one will probably be based on some new thought that I have about this whole subject matter. But I want to appreciate everyone very much for watching these videos, and please click that like button and ring the bell and subscribe. Thanks a lot. This is your friendly, experienced lawyer. Till next time.